Man, am I enthusiastic. Welcome to 52 at 52. I'm Matt McDowell, and welcome to job number 21, blood driver. And I'm going to say this about being a blood driver. Anytime you have an opportunity to call yourself a blood driver, you take it, and that's what I'm going to do today. I worked for a company called ABI, American Blood Institute, and the time right now, it was, what time is it? It's not this kind of time. The time. AIDS. AIDS was new. It wasn't established, and people were dying because the blood supply was tainted. They didn't quite know how to check for it, and some tainted blood was getting through. People were dying of AIDS from blood transfusion. So a bunch of doctors at Cedars-Sinai said, hey, you know what? Let's set up a private blood bank so that rich people, or anybody who could afford it, but it was mostly rich people, could have their own blood taken out at their leisure. And then when it's time for they need some blood, they just go to ABI, American Blood Institute, and they've got all their blood products right there that they need. What could be better? What could be better? You got your fresh frozen plasma. You've got your fresh frozen. When I say blood products, I'm talking about, when we think of blood products, we just think of those bags of blood. But there's also FFP for fresh frozen plasma. Fresh frozen plasma. It took me like 10 times to get that out. And it's yellow, kind of yellow, and it's long like this. And then you've got platelets. You've got regular blood. You've got platelets. Got your fresh frozen plasma. I had all this stuff. So they would freeze all this stuff for you. So there's big freezers. So I go to work for this company, but I'm not drawing blood, and I'm not a salesman. Although they did have some pretty slick salesmen, because you can imagine, you got to sell this to people. Well, and here's the problem with their business model: was there weren't that many people who were interested in saving their blood and banking it. There were some, and we had these big freezers that were very, very cold. And they had to monitor them like every 4 hours to see if the temperature and the humidity had to be just right. But most people were just like, whatever, I don't want to have to think about it. So they wouldn't bank their blood. So what they did is they were looking for alternate revenue streams. So what they would do is they would go to countries like Louisiana. They would go to states like Louisiana and get a bunch of blood from Louisiana or someplace like that, and then they would ship it in, and then they would sell it to hospitals there in Los Angeles. And what I would do was literally drive blood to hospitals. I'd kind of pick it up at the airport. Southwest Airlines was our airline of choice for all your blood needs. Southwest, we'd have these big containers full of blood, process it, and then we would sell it to hospitals, and I would deliver it. So when I say I was a blood driver, I drove blood. My shift ran from 4 p.m. to midnight. If you've been in Los Angeles, you know that rush hour starts around always, and I would drive in traffic all the time. And then we had two different vehicles. One, we had a stick shift Subaru, like some sort of station wagon, and that had a manual transmission. And a manual transmission in stop and go in traffic is quite difficult because your leg gets on fire. And then we also had a big Econoline van that was easier to drive because it was automatic, but it was also big. But I kind of like that one a little bit because you're up there high, and you've got American Blood Institute written on the back, and you're feeling like we wore lab coats. Did we wear lab coats? I wanted to wear lab coats, but I think we had some really ugly uniform we had to wear. I mean, it was ugly. But there's a difference between driving and getting paid to drive. This is my job. I'm stuck in traffic for 4 hours. I'm still getting paid. You're just like, whatever. There's a difference between that and on your way to Disneyland, where it's like this traffic is cutting into my fun time. So I didn't really mind the traffic when you're getting paid for it. And also, when you work from 4 to midnight, you're kind of at the center of things. You see things happen, like malathion spraying at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. Check. One time I worked from 4 p.m. to 6 a.m. I worked all the way around the clock because I don't know why. It was busy. I had lots of blood to deliver. And I was supposed to come in the next day, and the boss goes, no, you can't come in. You can't come in because we'd have to pay you millions of dollars, because there was overtime, and then there was double overtime and stuff like that. And my route, I would probably cover about 250 miles, 300 miles a night. Does that sound about right? About 250 miles a night. Because I would go all the way down. I'd start in Santa Monica, go all the way down to Orange County, and then go up all the way up, sometimes up to West Covina, and then up into the valley, up into like San Fernando Valley, high up into there, and then back into downtown Los Angeles, all over the place. Kind of an exciting job. It doesn't sound exciting, but there were some exciting things that happened. And some horrible things. One horrible thing, I was in Fountain Valley, and you get to know some of the blood techs pretty well. Like, hey, I've got your blood, and you bring the blood in on a big dolly, and you're unpacking the blood. And you actually have to unpack it, and they would check all the serial numbers against the invoice, and you have to wait. And so you get to know some of these blood techs pretty well. And what a business. Because now, when you go to donate blood, and you're thinking, oh, I'm doing this good thing. No, the Red Cross is making money on that. They have their processing fees and things like that. But guess what? They're making money. And the way we made money is we would sell blood for less than the Red Cross. And so if a hospital was trying to save money, they're like, oh, these guys are selling, quarts of blood for, $30. Not quarts, what were they called? Liter? They were smaller than a liter. A liter's huge. 500 milliliters? Anyway, something. So they would sell them. Where was I? I was totally got that. Oh, so I'm in Fountain Valley, and I'm at the hospital, and I know this blood tech pretty well. And he goes, hey, you want to see something horrible? And of course the answer is yes. And I go, sure. And he takes me into this room, and he opens up, it's the morgue, right? And I'm thinking he's going to show me a dead body, which I guess I want to see, but maybe I don't. I don't know. Anyway, he opens up this drawer, and there's these two little bundles. There's two little bundles about this size, wrapped in cloth, like a blue cloth. And it's two stillbirths. And he goes, yeah, these were some stillbirths that we had. And I'm like, whoa. But what made it even worse was right then, the door opens up, and this guy walks in. And I'm going to paint a picture of what this guy looks like. Balding, stringy hair, about 6'7", 250, 300 pounds, big guy. Suit and jacket, not suit jacket and tie. So blazer and a tie, which he managed to make look really seedy. It was kind of frayed and dirty. He had a big bulbous nose that was like a drinker's nose with the red vines. And he comes in, just big meat hooks of hands. Not meat hooks, but like, I don't know, sausage fingers, right? And he comes in, he says, yeah, I'm here for the stillbirths. And we were just like, what? And he worked for the morgue, and he was coming to pick up, not the morgue, but he worked for the cemetery, and he was there to pick up the stillbirth. So what something was horrible became even more horrible. And the blood tech and we never even talked about like that guy picking up the stillbirths, or that we were in there looking at him, because like you're looking at these stillbirths, and let's move on. I don't want to talk about that anymore. What was impressive about these guys at ABI is they were not content to do one revenue stream. They were like, look, no one's banking their blood, because I'm not sure if we had anybody with that. But they were making some pretty good money buying blood from different places like Louisiana, Oklahoma, I think. But they also started to test for hepatitis C. And it's like, you know what? We can test for hepatitis C. And so we would go to all these different hospitals, and we'd take their blood samples. And one of the hospitals that we would go to was County, LA County Hospital, which was built in the 20s, something like that. And you'd pull up there, and I had to pull up there. Like, I couldn't go there before 10 o'clock at night. And then I had to go and be at the airport by midnight. So I pull up there at 10 o'clock at night. And you would see crazy stuff there. There was this one guy, as I'm walking down these halls that were built in the 20s. I mean, it's scary. It's kind of creepy there. And there's this guy, and he's covered in some sort of green fungus. And he's walking, kind of shuffling through this. It's night in a scary hospital. And if you know anything about me, I hate hospitals 100%. I do not like them at all, because I spent a lot of my childhood in hospitals, so I don't like them. And he's got some sort of green fungus all over him. And he's walking down this hallway with this, one of those things, a drip bag. And you're like, like a nightmare. It was like a nightmare. And then, or sometimes you'd pull around the corner, and a guy would open up the door, and he'd wave you down, and he's covered in blood from a gunshot. And he's like, where's emergency? And he's bleeding all over the place because he just got shot with a gun. And I had, it's around the back, That's the kind of directions you feel pretty good about giving. Hey, where's emergency? I'm bleeding to death. That's around the back. So we got, banking your blood. We got selling blood. We've got testing for hepatitis. But they also gave back. Because one of the things that we also did at ABI was when blood was about to expire, and blood has an expiration date. It's only good for so long, even when it's refrigerated. Blood doesn't last forever. We would donate it to AIDS patients because they would, if they were, these AIDS patients, they were late stages of AIDS. And when you would give them complete blood transfusion, I guess it made them feel better. They felt better, and it was good for them. And so we would donate this blood to these guys. But what that meant is you had to type their blood. So I had to go to their house and get these vials of blood that they had, and then bring them back, and then they would type them, and they would make sure that the blood was a match, and then they would ship the blood to the hospital where they would get this transfusion. So there I am driving around Los Angeles, going to all these AIDS patients' houses, and the other driver who worked there, she did it like 2 or 3 times, and she's like, I can't do that anymore. Because let me tell you, it was a bit grim. Because you'd walk into someone's house who's dying of AIDS, and they've got care workers there, and the nurse would draw the blood and hand it to you. And here you've got, it's not one of those things where you're like, hey, I wonder if this is lethal. It was blood that was tainted, and you just kind of grabbed it. And you're supposed to put gloves on and stuff, but if the nurse didn't, you were like, okay, I guess I'm not. Sometimes you would. And then you're driving around, you get this vial full of tainted AIDS blood. It was grim. And you're hoping you don't get in a crash, because you can imagine that would not be good. Now, I may have mentioned that I worked from 4 to midnight. And I also had another job that I would go to from 7 to 3:30. So I was basically working a lot. Basically two full-time jobs. And I was also dating my girlfriend one I broke up with before, and I went to Paris. Back with her. But when am I going to date her? When am I going to see her? So occasionally she would come along on the drives, and the boss was fine with that, So you're just driving along with your girlfriend, having a great time, because you would stop for Subway. It wasn't all gunshot, fungus, AIDS patients. This was one of the highlight stories. So hopefully you've made it this far, because this was the highlight of this whole blood drive story. We come in, I've got my girlfriend with me, and we're finishing up the night's rounds. It's about midnight, maybe 11 o'clock, maybe 12:30, something like that. But, I'm young. The late night doesn't bother me at all. And we pull around the corner, pulling into the American Blood Institute there in West Los Angeles. And I look, and there's a truck right next to the building that we were pulling into. You had to almost drive right past it. That's completely engulfed in flames. I mean, it is just engulfed in flames. And I said to Paris, I go, man, this thing just happened. I go there because there's no one around, and this car is just engulfed in flames. And we get out, and we're watching it. And while we're watching it, there's something in the back that's all on fire. And it kind of explodes, and something goes up and hits one of the windows, because the building was like maybe a 14-story building that we were in. It hits one of the buildings, and the glass comes raining down. And then there's like a wall. Then the gas tank goes, and then all the gas goes running down the street. And so there's like a 30-foot, 40-foot wall of flames that are 15, 20 feet high, just right in the middle of Los Angeles. We're like, what the heck is going on? How come, where's the fire department? This just happened. And so we go to the security guard in the building, and he's kind of wide-eyed. I just called it in. And we're like, okay, and we're watching it, And there's something else in the back that goes off, and we're like, wow, this is kind of, what's going on? What's in the back there? And is it just, what's this crazy? The fire department comes, and we watch them for a little bit. But by this time, it's like, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have to start my other job at 5. So I'm like, okay, would this be fun to watch the whole thing? But I got to go. So I take my girlfriend home, go home, sleep for a little bit. I come back, and I had to return the keys to the van because they needed to use the van, and I was like, it was too late. On my way into my next job, I'll return them in the morning. And I go there, and it's like, I'm trying to go there in the morning to return the van keys, and the traffic is horrendous. And I'm going to be super late for my job. I was late anyway, but I was like a half an hour late, and it was literally like 3 miles away because the traffic was so bad. And I never did get the van keys in there. I'm like, I'll just have to call them, and I don't know what to do. Maybe they have some spares or something like that. And so when I get to work, at this other work, which will be next week, I'll talk about that other job next week, I get there, and they have evacuated 14 square blocks of West Los Angeles. That building, in addition to housing ABI, American Blood Institute, also housed another initial company called the IRS, and it was a fertilizer bomb. This was just maybe a year or so after the Oklahoma City bombings, And it was a similar kind of bomb that was in the back of that truck. And it would have so when they evacuated 14 square blocks, they were clearing out everything. It would have taken out that entire building. And we were standing right there, and the thing that we saw go off was that bomb misfiring. Saved my life. We would have been wiped out. We would have been wiped out. The building would, and I saw the whole thing. So that's probably the closest I've ever come to well, I've been close to death many times, but that's one of those ones where you're like, wow, that really could have done me in. But you don't realize it at the time. You just kind of think, oh, that's kind of dangerous. But then it goes off, and you're like, you don't think that it's going to take out an entire building with a big fertilizer bomb. Who knew blood driving could be so dangerous? I gotta say, I felt very protected. I felt like I felt like divine intervention on that particular, maybe not just for me, but for all the people in that particular, in the buildings and all, because it was in the middle of a residential area. There was like a skyscraper, and then it was just residential area all around. And it could have been done some serious damage. And so that was some divine intervention, I think. I moved on. The business eventually went under because no matter how many revenue streams they were kicking in, I don't think that was a business model that was going to, partly because the Red Cross has the blood industry sewn up. You can't be an upstart and try to fight the Red Cross because they're like, ABI, I've never heard of you. But they have heard of the Red Cross. And even like if you ABI, you want to donate some blood? It's like, no, we donate to the Red Cross because ABI does sound like it's a for-profit, which it was, and so is the Red Cross, but there you go. But I did get some great things out of it. One, I wrote a script about being a blood driver called oddly enough, Blood Drive. And so that was fun to write that script. And I also got great stories to tell, like this one. And also, I got some money out of it. I think I got paid pretty well in that job. My friend Carla, she was the one who got me that job. I have to put some kudos out to Carla because she took care of me a lot. She would be like, because, remember where I'm coming from, substitute teacher. And she's like, we got to get you out of that situation. We need to get you driving blood. Forget molding young minds. We've got lives to save. Thanks for watching. 52 at 52, job number 21, blood driver. One thing that was interesting about that job is trying to stay awake. The only thing that would keep me awake was talk radio. I could listen to talk radio and stay awake. Nothing else could keep you awake. And you'd hear some craziest stories, like alien abduction stories, and you're driving around, and it's like black helicopters. You felt very tapped in to Los Angeles. That was the good part about driving all night. You felt like you were part of the underbelly. And Los Angeles has a pretty significant underbelly. That's it.